Hello everybody and welcome to another episode in the Learn to Py series. Today we're going to be looking at file types, opening files, reading files, file modes, writing to files, and the with statement. So before we actually start messing around with files, we need to know what a file actually is and what it does. And to simplify quite a bit, as programmers, there are two main types of files that we like to deal with. Technically, everything is a binary file because everything in a computer is encoded using ones and zeros. But as far as programmers are concerned, there are two main types of files, those being text files and binary files. Text files contain information that can be rendered as text, that can be broken down with new lines, and that doesn't have a null character, for example. And binary files are other kinds of files which can store different types of data. For example, an MP4 file that stores a video, or a PNG file that stores an image. Text files usually have the extension of .txt or .md. So let's see how we can open a file in Python. All we got to do is create a variable, let's call it file, and we're going to use the open statement. We're going to put in the file name, in this case let's say test file .txt, and this will be a text file, and then we'll just type this little symbol here, and this will be our mode, and I'll explain what that is a little bit later. But essentially it's going to open our file, and then we can print that out and see what the output is. As you can see, it returned this, which is our file that we opened. Whenever we open up a file in Python, it is good practice to close the file after you finish using it. This is so that we don't take up too much memory after the program is done. So we can do that because we have our variable here. We can access it and we can use the close method. And if we run that, it will close our file, and that won't be hogging up memory anymore. So as you can see, I've created a test file, which is a txt file. It's in the same folder as my Jupyter notebook, and I'm going to be using it to test out file reading in Python. So this is the text. Hello everyone, this is a text file made for testing purposes. Let's go back to our Jupyter notebook, and we're going to be testing out reading files. So how do we do that in Python? Well, first of all, let's open up our file using the open function. We're going to have to put in the name of the file. So we're going to put in this test underscore file.txt, but your file may vary. We're going to open it using read mode. Then we're going to say that a new variable called text is going to be file.read. Then we're going to print text, and then we're going to close our file. Now, that went pretty quickly. So what we're doing is we're opening our file, we're storing it inside a variable called file. Then we're accessing our file. We're using the read function. This is going to return a string, and we're going to store that in a text variable. We're going to call it text. Then we're going to print text, and then it's good practice to close the file, not to hog up memory. So let's see what the output of that is. It should print out the text. Again, this is what is stored inside of our file. So let's run this and see what happens. And as you can see, it prints exactly what we told it to. But what if we want to print just one line at a time? Then similarly, we can open our file again. And put in our mode, which is read. Then what we want to do is we want to create the text variable. Although maybe we should call it text line, since we're only going to be accessing one line of the text. And there's a separate function called readline. So we're opening our file, and then we're saying that the text line is going to be equal to the function readline applied to file. So this should read a line from file, the first line, and return it as a string. And we're going to store it in this variable text line. Let's run that, and then let's create a new block of code. We're going to print text line and see what we get. And what we get is the first line, hello everyone, which as we can see is the first line in our text file. So now let's see what happens if we run that again. Let's say text line is equal to file.readline. And this is going to give us the next line. So if we run this and then we print text line, we should get the next line, which is, this is a test file made for testing purposes. And that's exactly what it says here. Awesome. So why didn't we just print our file? Let's see what happens if we try to do that. First of all, let's close our file. And now let's open up a new file. It should be the same file as before. Test file.txt. And then our mode, which is read. Then what we want to do is print file. And let's see what we get. Oh, we get an error. Because this here isn't a string, this is an object which is storing our file, all of the information about our file. So if we want to read the text inside, we need to first convert it into a string. And that's what the read and the readline functions are for. If you try to use the readline function after you've already finished reading the last line in your text file, it will return nothing. Okay, so let's say we want to write to a file. How do we do that in Python? Let's create a new code block. And what we need to do is first open our file, aka use the open function, and we need to give it a name. Let's call it new_file, and we need to add the extension .txt. And this is where it gets interesting because now we use the write mode instead of the read mode. Now that we have our file, we can write to it. So what we do is we access the file variable where it's stored, and we use the .write function. We use the write method, and then we can write some text inside, like hello world, for example. Then we can run that, and we've successfully created a file. Let's see what that looks like. And this is what's written inside our new file, hello world, which, as you can see, is exactly what we passed through in here. So that's pretty cool. And if we want, we can write as many things in here as we want. So for example, let's write, how are you? Then we can also write in the next line, I'm fine, thanks. And if we run that, and as you can see, the new things that we wrote down are now stored inside of the file. So now we have to close our file. But what if we don't want to have to close it every single time? What if we want to tell the program to do that for us so that we don't have to do it? Well, there's an easy way to do that using the with statement. So using the with statement, we can basically create an indented section of code within which the open function will operate. And once it's finished, it will close automatically. So basically, just to put it in layman's terms, we're saying everything that goes inside this with area is going to terminate as soon as it's finished. We can say with, and we can use the open function. Then let's say test file.txt. We'll put in the mode, read, and then we give it a file name. So let's say test file, and this will be the variable that we access the file with. And then we'll say test file.readline, and we'll print that as well. What this should do is it should open the test file with the read mode using the open function, create a variable called test file, and store the result of the open function into the test file, and then it should read the first line from that test file. Finally, it should close everything and open up our memory. So let's see what happens. What we should expect is that we see the first line of our test file that we created earlier. Let's see. As you can see, the text from our test file from the first line appears, so we can see that it worked. Okay everybody, so that was the video on file input output. It was a fairly quick one, and to be honest with you, it's something that's quite simple, but it can be explored quite deeply. There's a lot of things that I didn't show you in this video that you can find on the internet, because the amount of stuff that you can do with file management is crazy. There are so many things that you can do with it. If you enjoyed this video, then please make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to see more of these kinds of videos, then hit that bell icon, because it'll notify you every time that we publish a new video. There is a public GitHub available if you want to access all of the code available in this video and the previous videos in this series. There are also some other series for you to check out when it comes to Python and programming and data science. And if you want to check us out, then we have lots of other socials. We have a website that you can go and see. We have an X, we have an Instagram, we have a Facebook. So if you're interested in any more of this kind of stuff, then go check those things out. And I'll see you in the next video.